Well, hello. Happy Sunday. This is not our normal day that we come live to you. Normally it is Monday mornings at 10 a.m., but felt like kind of a big day. So it felt like maybe the right time to go live was tonight so that we can kind of get into all of the coaching carousel updates that have gone on today. Hi, Will. Hi, TJ. Uneventful day for you guys? Very eventful day for you all? Where are we?
It was definitely pretty busy for me. I mean, I made my sister fly back here at 6 a.m. just because I knew I had to be pretty much on top of it to try and cover all the coaching hires because all the dominoes were going to start falling really, really fast. So it was definitely an eventful morning, and then the whole afternoon was just update after update coming out of Oxford. It was pretty eventful for sure.
TJ, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're going to get into Lane first, but yeah, the Lane Kiffin drama that we got today, like through the announcement and everything else, like not just the last, month that we've had the drama, like just even the drama with him leaving. And then obviously the dominoes that fell with that, like Sumrall to UF and Golesh going to Auburn and just all the changes that have happened. It's been insane. And then, on top of that, we have what the hell's the committee going to do on Tuesday night? And, it's all, we got a great weekend of games too. I mean, I know there wasn't like this massive chaos that would have been fun to see the last week of the year, but we still got good games. And, it's been a fun, 72-ish hours. And so here we are to talk about it, I guess.
Well, I think first and foremost, we have to get into the Lane Kiffin stuff. This has dominated the airwaves for the last month. They're going to make a documentary on this, a Netflix movie series, something. I don't know. It's gotten so wild that there's parts of it that are almost unbelievable. Like if you wrote this in a script, you'd be like, maybe take that part out. That seems a little much, but it's where we are. I've been like scrolling my phone like a crazy person, but Lane Kiffin has taken the LSU job. I don't know if you guys saw him getting on the plane. He stopped and talked to Marty, and he was asked, how'd you make this decision? And he said, with a lot of prayer and conversations with his family. And he brought up that his dad was at 17 different stops during his coaching career. And he said that Coach Saban told him, your dad would want you to take this, which that's pretty strong, powerful words, kind of hard to turn that down. But he almost tried to turn it, I don't know, into a little like, we feel like we help people wherever we go. And so now at this new stop, it's just another opportunity to influence and help more people. Do you buy it? Or is he thinks it's a little bit easier to win at LSU?
I buy it, and I also think it's easier to win. I think he knows both parts of that, but he's definitely at a point now where he's definitely sick of being vilified. He's not sick of the attention. Maybe that came out wrong, but like he knows, like he doesn't want. I think I'm wrong what I'm saying right now, but I think he knows both things.
I think you're wrong too.
I do think that he wants to do it because he feels like it's right, but also for the objective reasons of you're going to LSU.
Yeah.
So
I do think both are true, and the PR thing is it's been a nightmare for weeks now.
TJ,
I don't think I think it's a little bit of coach speak to say that he wants to go impact people, because you get the same number of players on one, does it matter if you recruit them to Oxford, Mississippi, or you recruit them to Baton Rouge or Gainesville or Tallahassee or Columbus or South Bend, or it doesn't matter, right? You get the same group, total number, right, of guys that you can have an impact on their lives. I have no problem with Lane making this decision because it's all about Lane, but I think he made this decision because it's all about Lane. And I would do it too. If I was working for some mom and pop little phone repair store and Apple called me tomorrow, I'd be like, yeah, guys, I'm out, man. I'm really sorry about this, but I am out. I'm going to go be the CEO of Apple. Bye. Yeah. And so I don't have a problem with it. Now, the way that Lane handles it, I mean, is that the greatest situation? No. Did he put out the statement saying he knew I wanted to coach him in the playoff, knowing that they would never allow that?
Me too.
Right. Like, I don't know, man. I don't have a problem with the decision he made. I don't buy the, like, dude, you wanted a better job and you went and got a better job. Like,
I didn't say that. I
that's
think
all it
he
is.
can win easier at LSU. I didn't take it as him influencing a new locker room full of people. I took it as influence, like the peripheral, the people that work in the stadium, the different, like the people that maybe don't change over every single cycle. But I also think
Ole Miss has stadium workers too, you know.
well, I think he's already influenced them. He's already done positivity.
Oh boy, what Mother Teresa Kiffin
Said,
over here.
I think it's all coaching. But I also don't have an issue with it.
No problem.
I feel bad for Ole Miss. I think they're in a tricky situation. I see completely both sides of this. I understand Ole Miss not want to continue to have.
Ooh,
We lost her.
I lost Allie for a minute.
Instead, you lost me?
Yeah, I don't know if your Wi-Fi is bad, but you're just like super choppy and.
Well, I lost Will. Can you hear me now?
I've got you. I mean, but like, yeah. All right. While Allie's gone, I'll let Will roll for a little bit. How successful will he really be at LSU? Because you know the expectations are going to be crazy, Will.
They are. I mean, the expectation you would think is probably championship in 3 years. And I do think that he definitely has the opportunity to go win a championship. I think he has the ability to go win the championship. But of course, the counter to that is, well, he hasn't done it yet. I don't buy that at all because nobody's ever done it until they do it. And who's the candidate out there that a big school could have hired this year who's won national championships? They're not there because they're at their schools where they've done it, and that's such a rare commodity to have. So I do think he definitely has the potential to do it. I think he'll recruit really well, and we've seen how in game he's able to be a really good coach. And just in terms of blaming him for things, I don't understand. It's very easy to vilify Lane Kiffin. It's convenient to do that because he kind of has that sort of personality about him. He's been bad in the past.
Yeah.
Really, like what should he have done differently in this situation? Like it's easy if you're an Ole Miss fan to say you should have just signed it and gotten rid of all the thing, like all the drama. That's not what he wanted to do.
That's
And
right.
he's not like it feels like to me like this is no one's fault but the calendars. And blaming Kiffin for it, sure, maybe he hasn't said all the right things, but this situation, no matter who the coach is, it feels unavoidable.
I think, it is. It's the calendar's fault. And I'm sure that there are some things Kiffin could have done slightly differently. But I also kind of have the take that Ole Miss has such a little brother syndrome. I
From a fan base perspective, I think we're talking about the university, it's a little different.
Well, but no, I don't. I mean, I know that it's not. I know it's not the same situation with Tulane and Florida, and Tulane and Florida are on two completely different planes, and LSU and Ole Miss are at least in the same stratosphere. So I'm not saying it is the same, but there is a world where Ole Miss lets him coach, particularly if they were just going to hire Golding as their head coach when he left anyway, because you haven't lost any time with recruits. You haven't lost any time in your coaching search. The person you're hiring is right there on staff. That person could talk to recruits and Lane could have removed himself from that scenario. Is there a risk he's going to steal players or recruits from you? Yeah, but that risk exists anyway. If you recruited a guy for 2 years, does it matter that Lane sticks around for 3 more weeks or not? The recruit already has a relationship with Lane. It doesn't matter. So there is a world where Ole Miss let this happen. I do think it makes them more likely to go further in the playoffs. I do think it probably stabilizes them for the long term further. But I do also, I get it. I get why they're upset and why they did not want the ex-wife in the house. I get it. Lane doesn't get it because his ex-wife lives in the house. So, but I think there was a scenario where it could have played out a little bit differently. And Ole Miss also could have said, sure, we'll discuss it when the season's over, instead of forcing the answer to a question that they didn't really want to know the answer of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other part of it. They could have let Lane play this out as, I'm making no decisions until Ole Miss is done playing. And then administration could have echoed the exact same thing. We'll have these conversations with Lane when the time is right. The time is not right until we're done with the playoffs. A la Washington and Alabama and whatever else. But that's not how they played this. And so I do think they force Lane's hand, and then they're surprised that he freaks out on them.
I wonder if Ole Miss thought that they could pressure him into staying by giving him the ultimatum, because ultimately what would have been best for Ole Miss, they didn't go on a different search. They didn't go do, they kept their internal guy. So why not just have the conversation with him privately of, hey dude, coach us through the playoffs and then leave for LSU. Now maybe LSU would not have allowed that, but in talking with people around LSU,
I feel like they would have.
I think they would have. Yeah. Like I think they would have said, yeah, the portal will open up. They'll probably lose in the second round anyway. They're not,
I know Florida had told them that they would be okay with it. I don't know why LSU would be any different on that front.
Yeah, I think they would have, but could Ole Miss have handled a little bit differently and just let him, not pressured him into like, dude, this is our coach. I'm coaching through the playoffs and I deal with everything else after. Mm-hmm. Maybe we wouldn't have had the speculation that we had. Maybe it wouldn't have been the circus, but that's more on Ole Miss than it is on Lane.
Yeah, I think
in Lane's perfect scenario, he would have coached through the playoffs and then left for LSU.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's some blame to go around. The calendar getting a large portion of it, but Ole Miss could have done things differently. I do think that they were hoping they could set an ultimatum for Lane, and he would feel so guilty and so loyal to those players that he would pick them over his own ambition. But that's not a fair scenario to put him in. You work your entire life to get to the top of the proverbial mountain. If for Lane, the top of the proverbial mountain is LSU, if you say no this time, will you ever have the opportunity to say no again? And what would be different about that scenario then, where it was okay to say yes in the future, but it wasn't in this moment? So I don't think that's a fair situation to put him in and expect that he's going to pick these mercenaries, by the way, who Ole Miss is paying to be on their roster, pick those mercenaries over his lifelong ambition. I don't know. I think that's not fair.
Mm-hmm. I am curious now. We talked about the playoff things, like, so what, Lane's gone and he brought the OC with him? Like, I wonder if there's any degree where they do end up actually dropping in these playoff rankings. We can get to that later, but like, I do wonder if this does end up still being consequential for Ole Miss, that this had to play out where he was gone before the playoff even started.
And in terms of LSU letting him coach, if they were going to keep Baker, which that's what it appears is happening, that Lane Kiffin is keeping the DC Baker, who is already, of course, in the building, there wouldn't be a whole lot of harm to them to let this play out a couple more weeks. So I bet they would have let him, especially if Lane's been so vocal about, I wanted to do this. You would think, well, LSU would have given him permission for that to happen as well. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't love the way this is all playing out. I do think it's hysterical that Lane thought he was taking the entire offensive staff, and Ole Miss said, hey, we'll double your salaries. And then a few of them were like, all right, sorry, Lane, hopping off the PJ, going back home to Oxford for the pay raise. Watching the little microaggressions back and forth has been amusing. Did you see, the podcaster that said you can't turn a hoe into a housewife? Yeah. That Lane sent him a meme of himself wearing a hat that said hoe across it, and on the table with an orange and blue hat that said housewife across it. I do think that is hilarious. And the podcaster said Lane texted that to him.
That was probably the funny. I mean, there's been a lot of drama that's pretty funny, but their interaction on Friday was pretty great. I mean, it sounds like they kissed and made up, so the hoe did get, a little bit of a kiss to that podcaster at least. But
welcome be hoe.
Yeah. Allie, restart your computer real quick. I'm going to talk with Will about something, but you're all frozen up. So, dude, she really did just get out. We'll skip Sumrall because I do want to get Allie's thoughts on that, and we'll talk for just a minute about Golesh to Auburn. Just overall thoughts here. I mean, Allie and I are both in Tampa, so I like him. I wonder how invested they'll be, how bought in they'll be, but just thoughts here.
I love it. I mean, because you get an offensive-minded guy who has SEC experience already being at Tennessee. Now you get him to run this program. And my first thought when I saw that they hired him was that what Alex Golesh can do with Deuce Knight, I think, in that offense next year is going to be terrifying. Because you saw what he was able to do with Byron Brown's a dual threat guy. And his defenses, Golesh's, I mean, USF was unbelievable at forcing turnovers. And Auburn's turnover margin has been awful. So if you're able to turn that around and all of a sudden bring this sort of dynamic dual threat quarterback offense, like you really are kind of filling in what Auburn's been missing. And I think Golesh is an awesome fit there.
What do you think about player retention? Like because he's a running guy, like, do you think it's harder to retain somebody like, Cam Coleman, certainly they've got elite weapons. I'm trying to think, and I'm like, oh yeah, those guys. Is that going to be harder, or do you think he can do it?
I think there's a chance because he is an offensive guy. So you can still kind of sell that pitch like, it might not be air raid, but we're still going to be playing a fast, pace of offense. We'll get to Sumrall in a little bit, but like I do think Sumrall might have a hard time retaining a guy like Dallas Wilson because he's going to be more physical, more slow. But I think that Golesh, it always is kind of tricky with having a group of 5 guy move up to the SEC, and then you have Cam Coleman sitting there like, dude, Kirby Smart's going to pay me $1 million. So like that always is kind of hard having a non-SEC coach coming up and immediately having to compete with some of the best in the league. So it is always going to be hard, especially with those top players, because you know that every elite program is going to be throwing $1 million at them. But I mean, Auburn has the money, right? And if Golesh is able to just get in there and make a good first impression, I think it's possible, but it's going to be a little harder for Golesh to retain those superstars just because I do think of everybody else who's going to be coming in to try and pluck them up.
What is their expectation as far as the timeline goes?
I mean, you got to at least make a bowl next year. I mean, probably playoff conversation year 3, maybe make you run it at year 4. Because I do think with Hit being his first power experience, in theory, you give him more time. I'm not sure how much patience Auburn has at this point, given, Brian Harsin, Hugh Freeze, all that. But I think, within the next 5 years, you've got to be a legitimate contender. And it's just at least steady growth, if nothing else, right? Can you win 6, then 8, then 9? Like, that's all you have to do. But don't come out and go, 9-3 your first year, and then all of a sudden fall off a cliff to where it doesn't seem sustainable. So as long as you can just kind of keep progressing, keep showing signs of improvement in like a true proof of concept, then that should be enough for a team like Auburn, who's at least been down the dumps recently, to slowly build up and become nationally relevant again.
All right, we'll bring Allie back in and talk a little bit about Sumrall to UF. Allie, I don't know if you're unfrozen or not, but tell the kids to get off their iPads and go to bed. School day tomorrow. UF fans hate this, so we can just be honest about it. Nope, lost Allie again. It was a good try, but I'll just roll with Will on this, and then we'll get Allie back in just a second. But UF fans not real happy, Will.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have a reason to not be happy, or is it just like they would have been mad with any? To me, it feels like a combo as an outsider. It's the fact that his name's not Lane Kiffin, and he's a group of 5 coach that comes in with similar accolades to Billy Napier, who was a group of 5 coach from the same state. I understand the frustration there. I think Sumrall is a better hire than Lane. I don't think you could convince any Florida fan of that ever, but I understand the frustration.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, I actually talked to Allie about this before. Like, I don't think objectively that Sumrall is that bad of a hire. He's not a great hire, but he's not bad by any means. But because it's not Lane Kiffin, and for this whole coaching, even going back to last year, like Florida was effectively promised Lane Kiffin when you move on, there's obviously that giant letdown. And because it is a group of 5 guy or group of 6 from Louisiana, it feels like it's Billy Napier 2.0. I don't think that's the case. Of course, I didn't think that Napier was going to be a disaster, 4 years ago, but here we are. But I don't think that Sumrall is this total nightmare that it's being made out to be. I just think optically, because of the letdown from being, the favorite to land Lane for so long to then suddenly falling off and having to scramble for Sumrall, it's just a massive letdown for the fans, and it's kind of a slap to the face.
I agree. I think it's the letdown. I don't think it has anything to do with Sumrall personally. I think you could sub Sumrall's name for 5 or 6 other up and coming coaches, and the reaction would be exactly the same. And I think that if he had been on the original list that got leaked out from people that the UAA talks to, beat writers and things like that, if he had been a name that had been floated, last year when we were talking about replacing Napier, I think fans would have felt better about it. It just felt like it felt like a panic pick, so to speak. And it might not end up being a panic pick by any means. And he may end up being our Mike Elko. He may end up being incredibly successful at the University of Florida. And as a Gator fan, I hope he is. I never want to be the person that's on a flight rooting for the pilot to crash. That doesn't do anything for me as a fan, but I would be lying if I said I didn't feel like there was a massive letdown when, all of our biggest boosters who are in the know 99.9% of the time are very confident that we are landing Kiffin. All of the information that we were told from sources that we do trust was that this was going to happen. And so it didn't. And then it felt like a fail in such a spectacular fashion. You watch the meltdowns happening and the infighting from the boosters. You hear the stuff about Scott Strickland basically not following the advice given to him by the headhunting company that he hired, Turnkey. It felt very discombobulated. It felt very botched. And so when you feel, before you even hear Sumrall's name, you feel like this is a circus, this is a disaster, your athletic department is not doing things the way they're supposed to. And then, ta-da, this is the name you're presented with. That's why it feels like a letdown to everybody else. The PR side of this from Florida could not have been managed worse, in my opinion. And unfortunately, the person that will suffer the most from that is Sumrall, because he will be given less grace, less rope from the fan base than he could have been if presented differently by the university.
So I have two kind of follow-up thoughts, questions, comments, whatever. What went wrong with Lane? Did he just, because it felt like the connections were there to where we all were picking UF. And I just think any objective outsider, I didn't think LSU was, now I will rank LSU as a better job than UF. And I've said that for weeks, but I also rank UF ahead of FSU. So that's not just me being a biased homer or hater or whatever. I think I could just objectively say that in college football, but I didn't think they were that much better of a job to where preference wouldn't matter, right? Florida State's a better job than Georgia Tech, right? So, but that would not be a preference thing, right? Or Florida's a better job than Kentucky, but it's not close to where you're going to go with your preference. So so that's not what LSU and Florida was to me. So where Florida felt like they had the connections, they were almost as good of a job, if not, kind of right on that same path. So where did it go wrong with Lane? And then the follow-up on that, going back to Sumrall, is, man, what kind of pressure is he under? Where I don't think Florida fans are going to say, oh, well, we went with somebody that wasn't Lane Kiffin, and so now we only need to win 7 or so games next year to be back. And I also wonder, to add on to that, now I've got 3 questions in at once. Will if you were going to promise Lane all this stuff, right, like NIL resources and control of the program and everything else like that, are you going to give Sumrall that same thing? Can you even get the donors to give Sumrall that same thing? And if you're not investing the same way that you did it with potentially Lane, are you setting Sumrall up to fail from the start? So again, to recap the long-winded 5-question thing, what went wrong with Lane? And second, what is the realistic thought here for Sumrall going forward?
With Lane, I think I have a couple thought processes on there. One, I think Strickland blinked. I think it's stressful to be in a situation where you're not sure if you're the person being picked. I think you're watching other programs make hires, or that they're deep in negotiations with other candidates that you may be interested in, and you are panicked that you will be left at the altar with no one to marry. So you decide, you know what, I'm going to pick the cutest girl that's going to say yes to me and not wait for the dream girl who may not pick me anyway. And I honestly think that is what happened. Now, had he not blinked, would it mean that UF would have gotten him? I don't know. But I do know that this narrative that UF has been out of it for a week is not accurate. I do know that as of Saturday, Strickland still had some conversations going on with Lane. So the idea that communication had been cut off for a week is not accurate. But I do think he panicked. And I think that, maybe rightfully so. If Sumrall was always your number 2, you knew he was about to commit to Auburn. They had a deal in principle in place. And so you think, okay, if I don't get Lane and I don't get Sumrall, where am I going to go next from there? They knew that if he left Ole Miss, that then there were somebody that's trying to fill the space there. There was probably word that Kentucky was going to get rid of Stoops. And I mean, I don't put Kentucky and Florida on the same plane, but honestly, had Kentucky opened the day before, Sumrall may be there. He's a former player. That's his school. That was, a dream of his at one point. So I think Strickland's not great at this, and he panicked a tiny bit. And in terms of are the expectations different? No, but I do think Lane would have retained any bit of the roster that he wanted. He also would have had all the NIL budget in the world, which means he would have been expected to win immediately. I don't think you give a guy $28 million in NIL, which is the number that I heard they were going to give Kiffin annually, and a $14.5 million salary, which he was also going to get, and the largest assistant coaching budget in college football, which he was going to get, and then say you get, 3 or 4 years to win. I think they would have expected to make the playoffs next year, or at the very least year 2. I think with Sumrall, the expectations are going to be slightly dictated by how much of the roster can be retained, which is obviously a direct reflection of him and the staff that he hires, but I still think it'll be a part of this equation. But we're in a college football era where winning can happen immediately with the transfer portal. So it will not be a situation like Napier where you got 4 years to see if you can build it from the ground up. The infrastructure is here. There is no need to come in and build a different culture. The roster's great if you can retain it. So I don't know that they were going to expect him to make the playoffs next year. Like, probably would have been the pressure on Kiffin, but they still got to win quickly.
Yeah, I think for Sumrall, looking at next year, I just look at their schedule. He's got to win 7 because you have 2 cupcakes, and then you have FSU, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss are both at home. Split those. Then you have South Carolina, Vandy, Kentucky, Missouri, and some other hard games mixed in there. You've got to win 7. Like, you've got to show progress, regardless of what the roster looks like. If you go less than 7, you can get 7 or 8. Then you can kind of show a proof of concept. Like, look, this is winning. We went 4 games last year. Maybe you doubled your win total. Only go 8-4, so you don't go to the playoff, but you can show real growth. That, I think, has to be the expectation because the Florida fans, they're not going to settle for 6-6 again next year with a loss, at Kentucky or a loss South Carolina, because that just feels like you're on a treadmill. You're not making any progress. And if the thing that happens, all the chatter comes back up of like, I cannot believe we hired another non-power coach from Louisiana. We literally got a second Napier. He's got to go win 7 or 8 games, and then you can show the progress. You can say, I'm pulling this team up from a 4-win situation. The roster is still there. The talent is still there. And you got to prove that with Sumrall, with the coordinators that hopefully he hires are great, and with the talent acquisition that you will always kind of have a baseline level of success with at Florida, that him and his staff can get that done.
Yeah.
I wonder, what I think, going back to all these coaches, we know what Lane's going to get. And this counts for Auburn. This counts for Ole Miss with Pete Golding. It counts for, Sumrall at UF. These guys were all going to absolutely break the NIL bank if Lane Kiffin picked any of their schools, right? Yeah. Ole Miss needs to give Pete Golding whatever they were going to give Lane. And I actually think they might be the one school that does it, but Florida needs to give Sumrall what they were. And now that might be tough. Again, will the donors really pony up? Because ultimately, like, it is people paying the money. Is Gary and the guys going to give the money? But whatever they have available, they can't make these guys fight with one hand tied behind their back. Yeah. And Florida needs, and Auburn needs to do the same thing for Golesh. Like, there's going to be some on-the-job training that happens when you go from USF to Auburn. There's going to be some on-the-job training that happens when you go from Tulane to Florida. Like, that's just what it is. There's going to be some of that for Pete Golding too. And whatever they were willing to invest in Lane or whoever their number 1 candidate was at any of these schools, they're doing that coach a disservice because the fan base is already upset. Maybe less so Ole Miss. The fan base is already upset. People are already frustrated. You've already kind of shown that you're incompetent from a leadership perspective, from an administrative perspective in some of these places. If they don't give, and now again, you only can give what you end up having. But if they're not giving Sumrall what they would have given Lane, I think Florida is setting themselves up to do this again in 3 years. We'll be talking about it 3 years from tonight. Who are they going to hire in this next cycle? And if they do, I like Sumrall. I think he can be a really good coach. I think he is very well respected. I think he does a lot of things really well. But yeah, if they hold back, then yeah, I mean it'll be have a new AD and a new coach, so maybe that'll make Florida fans happy on everything.
I mean, that would not suck for sure. But, I think it's important for Florida fans to try to give Sumrall a fair shake. I think that you can completely be upset at the administration and feel like this didn't go down the way that it should. And, I'm okay with the angst of that. And I am right there with Gator fans. But I also don't know that at this point, what does it benefit to take that out on Summerall? Like, do you want to be miserable in your fandom? I don't. I'm like,
I think that's a pretty small subset of the fan base.
I think so. But,
I think
he picked
they're going to
us,
sell out the first 2 games against crappy opponents and be just fine.
and they will. And we picked the guy that wanted us, right? He had the opportunity to go to Auburn. His wife is an Auburn grad. He would have had the opportunity to go to Ole Miss had he not already signed with us. I have it on pretty good accord that he had the opportunity to go to Mississippi State a year ago, passed on that opportunity. He might have been LSU's number 2. Who knows? This is a coach who had options, who felt like Florida was his best option. That's a win for the Gators. This is somebody that wants to be here. I get the Napier comparisons, the Napier 2.0. They have a similar record. They came from the G5 from the state of Louisiana. I get it. We thought we were safe from getting a G5 guy from the state of Louisiana, and here we are. I get that. But I do think his intensity level is different, which was one of our biggest complaints about Napier. I do think he's got that little bit of Kirby Smart psycho in him, and I also appreciate and love that. I don't need anybody that's going to pat somebody on the back after they beat their ass. I want somebody who, ignores the handshake on the way out the door because they're so mad about what just happened on the field. And I do feel like I see that. And I do think he didn't put his head in the sand with the statement that he made this afternoon about knowing that Florida fans want a high octane offense. He put that out on purpose, and that is to show Florida fans that he listens and he sees what they're asking for. Now, let's see who he hires. If he brings his offensive coordinator from Tulane and says like, ta-da, I'm giving you a high octane offense, Florida fans aren't going to be happy. But if he goes out and hires an offensive coordinator that gives you pause, that is like, damn, he is serious. He knows what Florida fans are looking for, I think that that'll help. The biggest hire he can make right now, though, is a badass strength and conditioning coach. That is Napier's first mistake that he made coming to Florida, was bringing a strength and conditioning coach from Louisiana. The best possible thing he could do is go out and poach someone powerful, somebody good, a name we recognize, and get him in the building immediately. I think that would go a long way.
All right, Ryan Silverfield goes to Arkansas. One fan base that's upset to another one. Arkansas. I think more of their fan base is upset than Florida's is. Florida's is like a small portion of a very large online fan base. I think a lot of Arkansas fans are just like, what the heck are we doing here? Thoughts, Will?
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas got the short end of the stick here. They were the least appealing job in the SEC that this cycle, and it kind of shows. And we thought Golesh was signed there 3 days ago, and then that was really dependent on what Kiffin was going to do, because I talked about how the confidence in Kiffin going to Florida, that was that was shared confidence. Mm-hmm. So then once Kiffin went to LSU, all of a sudden Florida takes Sumrall, Auburn takes Golesh, like all those coaches moved up one more level, and then Arkansas was left with the scraps, which was Silverfield. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember the last Memphis coach to come to a power school. I imagine he's doing pretty bad right now, but it just
maybe he can go back to Memphis.
Arkansas, they got their short end of the stick here, and I don't blame their fans for being upset because when they first fired Pittman, it was like maybe they'll go get Gruden. Maybe it'll be this cool NFL guy who comes back in, and then all of a sudden you'll get the high flying guy from USF and Golesh. Now you just have Silverfield, it feels like a letdown, and I don't think that Silverfield really is the guy to get Arkansas back to where they can be winning 7 or 8 games a year in the SEC and kind of be competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I there's a lot of disappointment in the SEC today, all the way around. Like LSU's maybe the only happy fan base that exists at this exact moment. I don't even know you could say that Alabama's that excited about where they're at. Like happiness is hard to find.
I think Ole Miss fans are fake happy.
Oh,
I think they're fake happy.
those on social media. I mean,
No, they're all like F lane, go Pete. Like I think they're faking themselves right now.
I think Ole Miss did the best with the situation that they had. I think that I had heard weeks ago Golding would be a great a great possibility for them. And so, I mean, with Sumrall off the table, this makes sense to me. There, you don't waste a single moment. You build that camaraderie. You let them, carry it through to the new year. But they're not happy. They're pissed, and it's the realization that like we literally didn't think that we were the little brother, but we are. And they thought because it's this new era of NIL that it didn't matter anymore, but it still matters. And that was very like hard for them to hear. And with Arkansas, they were like, shoot, we're getting this deal done before everybody else. And they actually leaked the information about Golesh being hired as their head coach midweek. People applauded, thought that was great. Golesh was pissed because he's still looking to see what other opportunities are out there. And that's how he ended up at Auburn. The interesting Auburn, I think this is a great fit for Auburn, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. But
we talked about that while you were frozen.
Oh, we talked about it. Okay. Well, perfect. Then I guess we won't. But I think this is just such a blah hire for Arkansas, and I do feel for their fans because they just a few days ago, like Florida fans, thought they were getting their first choice.
I mean, is there any hope? Well, like give us like the most optimistic positive spin on Silverfield that exists.
You can't go 0 for 2 on Memphis coaches. Well, like maybe this one actually works. Like, because I do believe that there is, group of 5 coaches elevating. They have not a great track record recently, but like this guy's a coach for a reason. Like Memphis was good. Memphis beat Arkansas this year. So like Silverfield knows what he's doing as a football coach. The question is, can it translate to the SEC? So if you want to go glass half full, you just say, this guy's a good football coach. He just needs to elevate his game, scale his performance as a coach up to where he is now, and it'll work. And for Arkansas, right? I mean, what they finished 2-9 this year, 2-10, 3-9. Like, can it get any worse? If he comes out and wins 4 games this next season, they're improving. So you kind of look at it through that lens and be like, it's not the guy that we wanted, but in all odds, we do see improvement next year. And then can he use that to recruit some more kids? And then we see 5 and 6 wins in 2027. Like, you just kind of have to put yourself in the lens of as long as we just get tangible progress year over year, like it's fine.
Yeah, and I think you also have to have a realistic view, which no SEC fan does. But you also have to have a realistic view of where your program is. Mm-hmm. Like, are they expecting Silverfield to come in and compete for SEC championships in the college football playoff? That's a little unrealistic. Can you make a bowl the next 2 of 5 years? 3 of 5 years maybe is a better expectation. And so Auburn, I think, is a little bit different. Their expectations are a little bit higher, and I think they're a tier above Arkansas, maybe 2 tiers above where Arkansas is. But I do think that if there's a realistic expectation and he's given a pretty long runway of how to build it, then yes, you could potentially get there. If they're expecting anything close to what UF is expecting, if they're expecting anything close to what Auburn is expecting, LSU, Ole Miss, all of them, then yeah, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you can be real about who you are as a program, sorry to the few Arkansas fans that may tune into this. They're a great fan base, great baseball program. It's fun to have Coach Cal there. I get it. But come on, it's the SEC in football. And you added Texas, Oklahoma, and there's going to be more realignment by 2030. Like, it's just, it sucks. Sorry to be so real with you on a Sunday night.
That's okay. We like real. And this is a little bit of a therapy session, I think, for Will and I at the very least. Maybe you, but you can live vicariously because at least we're getting new coaches. And you, my friend, are stuck with Norvell for yet another year.
I'm already dead. You can't kill what's already dead. So,
there's that. You guys already talked about the Golesh situation. For me, I think it makes sense, particularly because I have been told that they were pretty adamant about keeping DJ Durkin as their defensive coordinator. Sumrall had told him he'd give him an interview, keep it under advisement kind of thing, but not commit to it. Sounds like Alex Golesh was like, yeah, fine, cool. I got the offense handled. We'll just keep him. I think that's important for retaining their roster. They do have top 12 talent. And so if you can keep your defensive coordinator and your defense heading in the right direction and just fix the offense, maybe that's a great fix for them. But we shall see. But let's talk a little bit about some of the games that happened this weekend. The Iron Bowl was, once again, I think, Will, you said this, the Iron Bowl is Iron Bowling. And that is exactly accurate. We were watching the iPad as we drove home from the Florida State game, which I'm sure is illegal and totally dangerous. But the ghosts of Jordan Hare they're real, and it almost cost Alabama, but a special teams blunder, my favorite kind of mistake, as you all know, kind of sealed the deal for Alabama. So are they safe in the playoffs?
Don't they have to be? Because even if you get a third loss against Georgia and Atlanta, you can't set that precedent. Like you can't punish Alabama for going to the SEC championship and having the audacity to play a 13th game. Because that's when you start to have these conversations with these big conferences of like, we're just not going to do this with you anymore. We're going to do our own thing. So it feels to me like Alabama has to be locked in regardless of what happens. Because even though they're playing 10-2, Notre Dame isn't playing, Oklahoma isn't playing, Ole Miss, Oregon, all these schools aren't playing games. So this argument's been had before, obviously, but even though it would be Bama's third loss, it's in effectively the postseason. It's in a conference championship game. You can't kick them out of the field if they lose again to Georgia.
Also, wouldn't it be a good loss? Aren't they supposed to get credits for those?
They should move up in the rankings, actually.
I agree completely. And I was very much on the SMU should not get penalized for playing an extra game last year like they did, even though it cost Alabama in that situation. I don't think you should get penalized for losing. And as much as I had a problem, obviously, with Florida State being kicked out of the playoff, I thought Georgia was the best team in the country when Georgia didn't make the playoff in the 4-teamer in 2023. Like, I think Georgia should not have been penalized for that.
Enough to admit that this many years later now. That's gross.
What?
Jay. I'm here for that.
That Georgia was the best team in the field. I said that when it happened. There's no way that Georgia was the 6th best team. There's no way that if there. I literally said if you thought. I remember tweeting if you thought Florida State. There's no way that you could look at Florida State and say, you know what, they're not the 4th best team, but they are the 5th best team. And so ranking Florida State 5th was the worst. Like, if they'd have moved them down to like 8th or 9th, I could have lived with that. But leaving them ahead of Ohio State and leaving them ahead of Georgia, like Georgia was going to win the national championship that year if they went to the playoff. But all that said, I'm not a big fan of kicking teams out. What I think would get interesting for Alabama is if BYU won. Mm-hmm. That would be where things get really, really interesting. Because if BYU wins, I think Texas Tech is completely safe. I think they could lose by 20 and they would still be in. I don't think they drop, 6 spots at this point. So I think that Alabama losing, and they're currently behind Notre Dame, and I don't think that their performance against Auburn is going to be enough to jump them over Notre Dame. I think if Alabama goes into this thing in 10th, they're technically in the playoff in that moment, but BYU could leapfrog them.
Yeah.
And Alabama could get left out in that scenario because you're not really dropping them. You just have another automatic qualifier that is moving ahead of them.
Yeah.
The same way that is Miami 12th right now, or is Miami 13th? Who is 12th? The same way
is Miami, 13th is Utah.
The same way that the 12th place team in this whole thing is not really in the playoff because there's a group of 5 and an ACC, or maybe 2 group of 5s if Duke wins. Like, so that's where I think Alabama is.
Judging by the meltdown taking place on social media at the moment.
Oh God, I need them to get left out so fast. But that's where I don't think Alabama is completely safe. But you should not be penalized for losing a conference championship game. The same way BYU will not be penalized necessarily for losing to Texas Tech, which is how I think that goes down. They're in 11th right now. So they're not technically in because we need to give charity out to the group of 5 in the ACC who don't deserve to be in. But that's why I don't think they're completely safe. I think they need to win to ensure that. Now, maybe we'll know from the Big 12 championship beforehand, before the SEC even kicks off. But it becomes a little bit dicey if BYU wins. And so yeah, I mean, it'll end up being that FSU loss at the beginning of the year that'll come back to haunt them at that point, because nobody's gonna be shocked if, I mean, maybe Kirby Smart will be shocked because he can't beat them if it's not in a national championship. But I would be a little, I think Bama still needs to win this game and to remove all doubt, but I think they're relatively safe. What about Texas and Vandy though? Is there any real path for either of them?
So Texas beating Texas A&M was just absolutely hysterical, and I am all for all of the chaos, particularly when my team is bad. So I'm here for that. I just don't know where I see that there's a path to 9-3. However, I do get Sark's argument. I don't know if you saw him in the post game talk about basically like, you want to see us not schedule Ohio State, leave us out of the playoffs. Now, I do think that is not really giving enough attention to the fact that a really bad Florida team beat them. But he is correct that if they hadn't scheduled Ohio State first game of the year, this team would be sitting at 10-2, and we wouldn't be wondering whether or not they were going to be on the outside looking in. So I feel his argument, essentially, that if these marquee matchups that everybody says that they want at the beginning of the year, these out of conference games, if that's going to be what keeps us out, we're good. We play a hard enough schedule. We don't actually need to schedule that game if that's going to be a difference maker. It almost kind of felt a little bit like a threat when he was saying it.
It did, yeah. Super quick before I respond to that, just Mark Stoops is going to be fired tomorrow, per Pete Thamel. So Kentucky's also going to open up their coaching spot, which doesn't shock me. But anyways, back to the topic you were saying. Like, 3 losses is a lot of losses. You lost a quarter of your games. And I understand, like you said, Allie, I mean, I'm going to kind of echo what you said. Like, the Ohio State loss, they're going to claim that's being held against them. It's not. It's being held against you that you lost to a 4-win Florida team. So, yeah, sure, if you don't schedule Ohio State and you played, the Austin School for Deaf and Blind, you'd be 10-2 and you'd be in. Also, if you just beat the 4-win team in your conference. Yeah. Like, just if you win your football games, you'll get in. And we don't need to have this discussion. And in terms of Vanderbilt, they have got to be in the playoff. They have to be. They're a 10-2 SEC team, and they just beat the life out of Tennessee and Neyland. No one's done that this year. Yeah. Georgia only won there by 3. And I forget off the top of my head.
What a fun Cinderella story. We have to watch SMU last year. You better give me Vanderbilt this year.
Yeah, they've won 10 games out of the SEC. Diego Pavia has got to be a Heisman finalist. If you're a 10-win SEC team with your quarterback going to New York and you get left out of the playoff, that's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. So I think that Vanderbilt has got to be in based on what they've done and just looking at the overall body of work. And for Texas, you're right, Alec. I get Sark's argument. I understand that I think Texas is one of the most talented teams in the country, and on any day they can beat anybody. But there were 3 games this year where they didn't, and when that happens, you get left out.
I mean, Sark's not wrong though, because you can. The problem is that it's not just so black and white like that, right? Will said this, and Allie, you said it too. You lost to a bad Florida team. And you could get away with that if you hadn't lost another one. And then you can get away with that if Georgia didn't blow you out. And then you might be able to get away with that if you didn't go to overtime with Kentucky and Mississippi State. But for large portions of this, and they were underwhelming in their other 3 out-of-conference games, right? Like, they were flexing on UTEP at one point. I appreciate his argument because he is technically correct. Had they not lost to Ohio State and scheduled them, they probably would be in. I get it. Because they would have started out 3-0, had the loss to Florida. It wouldn't have hurt them, just like Northern Illinois didn't hurt Notre Dame last year. But he is right in the fact that if you don't schedule tough out of conference, if you go the Notre Dame route or the Ohio State route or whatever, and you play 1 or 2 hard games, yes, that is much better for you in a power conference than not doing it. But I don't know, man. Like, no, I don't think it changes any of the scheduling. These ADs don't care. They want big money from these big time out of conference matchups. So it's not really going to change anything. But he is technically right. But it feels disingenuous if they'd have lost to Georgia, Ohio State, and who was their other Oklahoma, right? Mm-hmm. They lost those 3 games. We might be having a different conversation. We might be saying, dude, you lost to 3 top 5 because Oklahoma would be top 5 at this point. Yeah. We lost to 3 top 5 teams. That's different. that Florida loss is what people are remembering.
Yeah.
And the way that they came back a little bit in that game, but they got dominated. It wasn't a close loss. It wasn't a good loss. Florida was dead in the water at that point and then got demolished in the next week by A&M. It's not like Florida was like started hot and then fell off. Like they sucked then. And so, yeah, I don't know, man. But on Vandy, Will, I think that this whole Notre Dame, so I think Miami should be ranked ahead of Notre Dame. I think head-to-head has to matter on the field. I don't think they will be. But it surprises me that there's not like a Vandy-Miami conversation because I do think Vandy's been, I think I would take Notre Dame head-to-head with Vandy. I might take Miami head-to-head with Vandy. But that is, again, I've never wanted to get to the place where we decide our college football playoff based on the Vegas odds. Like that is just, to me, that's not where we should be. We need to have some form of rewarding teams that look good and win against tough schedules. And Vandy's ultimately done that. And I don't think they're getting in. I don't think there's enough chaos that can happen in front of them. It would shock me. I mean, they need to be ranked ahead. I mean, because we talk about like the teams that are fighting for the bubble. If they're not ranked ahead of Miami when the rankings come out on Tuesday night, they have zero path. Like they need to be ranked. Whoever is ranked higher between Notre Dame, Miami, and Vandy, none of those teams play this weekend. None of them qualified for the conference championships. Notre Dame doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Whatever order the committee puts Notre Dame, Miami, and Vandy in, I guess Texas to some degree, but I don't think they're going to jump them up high enough to matter. Whatever order they put those three teams in, that's the playoff right there. And then again, BYU can upset it a little bit. Alabama could fall out,
Or it happens where one week doesn't correlate with the next, which
but none of these teams play.
Not, but we've seen that happen without teams playing. Like we actually have no idea what the committee is going to do, and if one week is going to correlate with the next. We've seen it happen both ways.
But not with teams off. Not when the only times they've moved teams is when they've played. I don't think.
Florida State moved and won. I mean, I don't know. You are putting a lot of faith in the committee to continue to do the same line of thinking each week. And I don't know that they have proven to me that will actually happen.
It would shock me if they moved teams 10 through 14 after being off a weekend.
Yeah. Well,
like what would change in their minds to do that?
Tennessee should equate to.
I think the win against Tennessee should move them ahead of Miami. I agree with that. Miami also got listen, I hate them just like you guys do. They also got a very impressive 30-point win on the road against a ranked team that was ranked very similar to Tennessee. And so do I think Pitt's better than Tennessee? No. I think Miami took care of business the way they needed to at the back end of their schedule, which wasn't very difficult, but they still did it. And Vandy, I would put them ahead of Vandy. Or I would put Vandy ahead of them this week, but it's more of an overall body of work, not necessarily just this one week. Because I thought Miami's week was just as good as Vandy's was.
Well, we shall see. I am really excited about this, the show reveal on Tuesday. We are actually going to have a show on Wednesday, so I'm sure we'll get to talk about that a little bit, to talk about this upcoming SEC championship matchup. Does anybody else find it ironic that we've expanded to 16 teams? We've got Texas A&M and Texas, and here we are with Georgia and Alabama as our SEC championship game. The more things change, the more they stay the same. But are you guys excited for that matchup?
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited for it just in the idea that it's the SEC championship game, right? And it's that whole Saturday of games all week. But I mean, it's definitely, I was probably ready to see an A&M in that game, or maybe even Ole Miss in that game. Like just a little something new would help. But I'm still definitely going to be totally dialed into this game for all 16 minutes of it.
Okay, I'm not upset about not seeing A&M there. It would have been cool for their fans, but I thought they were fake good. Like just the way that I don't think I realized it until the South Carolina game, hadn't played a team with a winning record in conference yet.
Yeah.
And I get that Notre Dame happened. They get all their flowers for that. But they finally played like a good to above average SEC team. And Marcel Reed just looked like absolute dog crap. I did not need to see Kirby Smart beat their brains in. Like that was not something, or I guess it would have been Alabama, not Georgia. I didn't need to see that happen. I didn't need to see them take a loss there to Bama by 20. But yeah, I'm excited for Georgia Bama because I think it's the best matchup we could have gotten.
I mean, it is. I think it is the best matchup. I don't know that I mean, I think Texas A&M was a little bit of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde this year, because I'm telling you, when I watched them, I thought they were better than Miami. I thought they were better, obviously, than Texas. I mean, I understand the argument that they haven't played teams with winning records, but the eye test for me with, lined up with my team, Texas A&M was the best one that I personally saw. So I don't know, but I think we have the best matchup. I love when it's Alabama, Georgia. I think we're going to see some hard-nosed football. We'll see if Kirby can, excise the Alabama demons that he seems to struggle with. But I love championship weekend. We're in the home stretch of the best sport in the world.
We are close. All right. Early pick. We'll preview this on Wednesday. Early pick for the SEC championship.
Georgia. You can't beat Kirby twice in the same year.
Yep, I'm going with Georgia. I think this is not. This is not Nick Saban's Alabama.
Yeah, I think I'm Georgia too, but until I see him beat them, it really does worry me. Georgia's playing better than Bama is right now. Although they didn't look great against I know it's a rivalry and we can say that for both these teams, but yeah, neither one of them looked great this weekend. Maybe they were already kind of counting their tickets to Atlanta, but yeah, I thought that both kind of underwhelmed. So
TJ, before we get out of here, we would be remiss if we didn't at least ask you about the Florida State game. What do you think of Jaden Baugh and his historic performance?
I think Florida State fans should celebrate that. I think they should be happy with it because Florida State's administration has told Florida State after the last 2 years that this is where their standard is. And so there's no reason to be upset about it. They should be happy that they got beat by 19 points in the Swamp against a lifeless Florida team that had nothing going for them against another rival last week. So yeah, I mean, this is what Florida State's program is, and Florida State fans shouldn't be upset with it. They should continue to trust their fearless leadership and, probably going to be fighting for a bowl again next year.
Will, in every single game that Florida ran the ball with Jaden Baugh 20 or more times, they won.
That's shocking. Wow.
I mean, a formula there that maybe the previous administration should have taken into consideration. And did you see Billy G's comments in the postgame? I stand Billy Gonzalez. I have for many, many years, far before it was cool. I think he is a great coach, a great person, and he bleeds orange and blue. But I thought it was interesting that he said it still eats at him that Ricky Pearsall didn't get his 1,000 yards. And it almost felt like a subtle jab at Napier because clearly Billy Gonzalez was not in charge of how play calling went when Pearsall missed out on that 1,000 yards. But he said he told the staff prior to the game he is getting 1,000 yards. And then he did, and then some.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I remember on that Wednesday preview show, Al and I, we both picked Moore for ball like 91. Didn't he break? He got it in the second quarter. Like it was never in doubt.
Early in the second quarter too.
It was really fun because that was the first time all year outside of the cupcake games where I was able to look at Florida. Like I knew they were running, FSU knew they were running, some guy who didn't even know where the game was going on knew they were running, and it was still 8 yards. Like it felt like I was actually watching a football team again. To see them kind of be able to exert their will against a team that they are more talented than. So it felt really good. I was thrilled for Ball, obviously, and it was the second highest rushing total in any Florida game ever for a running back. I think it was.
Yeah, the only
good luck to y'all because you only get to play that team one time next year. So good luck next year.
Well, I will say it is such a cool rivalry, as evidenced by the fact that stadium was jam packed, loud. Florida State fans showed up. Florida fans showed up. The atmosphere wouldn't have felt a whole lot different if it was a top 10 matchup, which is something that I think is so cool about this rivalry. Definitely did not feel like a 3-8 team fighting against a team hoping to be bowl eligible. It felt like more than that. And I love that for the players. I love that for the fans, honestly, of both sides who have been through a lot the last couple of years.
Yeah. And the first half was a lot of fun. It was a little surprising to me, that Florida even put the ball in Lagway's hands with all of his struggles and threw that one pass. And thankfully for FSU fans, they did. It did that again. That didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I guess Billy, being a wide receivers guy, wanted to at least try to do something there. But yeah, as soon as they threw the ball there and gave Florida State a chance to at least make it competitive, and then shout out the defense for doing something. That Florida again idiotically dropped back a couple of times on that first drive of the second half, and Florida State got a couple of sacks, and then I think from there Florida was like, all right, we're not throwing the ball again for the rest of the game, and they didn't need to, but they didn't need to on their previous 2 drives either. I thought it was, it was a lot of fun for a half and a drive. And then Florida kind of realized like, oh wait, we shouldn't have this idiot throw the ball. We should just run the ball with the best running back that we've had in the last, however many years. And from there, Florida State had no answer. So it was cool that Florida let us hang around for a half, and maybe stupidly so, but it was at least a fun half.
All right, guys. Well, this was fun. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media and listen to your work. And of course, we'll circle back to this on Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at WThomasSports, and then Tailgate Talk SEC on YouTube, podcast, and everywhere else.
I have nothing to plug. Subscribe to this channel.
All right, there you go. You can also check out a peek inside Gator football. We are going to have some more updates on the Sumrall hiring as the week goes on. But all right, guys, enjoy your night. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you're subscribed, and we will see you guys real soon.